Hey, what's going on? Thank you so much for watching. It would mean the world to us if you could just scroll down, like, hit the subscribe button for the Snaps YouTube channel. It goes a long way towards helping us out. Now, let's dive into some college football.
Alabama has found their new head coach, Kalen DeBoer, the now former Washington head coach, is going to Tuscaloosa to take over for Nick Saban. And I think he was on the short list for most of us. When it came down to it, there was a handful of guys that the Alabama Crimson Tide were going to trust to take over the greatest coach of all time. Some of the names that were discussed: Mike Norvell. He was a big-time name out of Florida State. Obviously, what he's done there in Tallahassee since he took over to getting that team to an undefeated season, even with all the allegations, I guess not allegations, but with the sanctions that were passed down from the NCAA not too long ago. Wasn't really on him, wasn't really his fault. It was still very much a candidate. Florida State locked him up, though. A nice new deal for Mike Norvell, going to be making $10 million a year. So he's out of it. Obviously, the number one guy for a lot of people was going to be Dan Lanning, a guy that was under the same tree, underneath Nick Saban, has built a team that wants to resemble at Oregon, wants to resemble how Coach Saban has built his team over the years there in Alabama. So it just would be a natural, easy kind of pick up from Eugene, put in Tuscaloosa. Here's the blueprint. Let's just roll with it. So he was, I think, a lot of people's number one. He's staying in Eugene to be the Oregon's head coach. I never really thought Sark was going to be the guy from Texas. We discussed it on the show here on Snaps of, you don't leave Texas. Texas is everything you want. I mean, it's a blue blood. You got the resources, you got the money, you got the facilities, you got the recruiting in the state of Texas. You just had an incredible year where you made the playoffs. Sark ain't going anywhere leaving Texas. Kirby, he's not going to leave he's not going to leave Georgia to go to Alabama. He went to Georgia. If anything, the discussions around the state of Georgia would be, could Kirby go to the NFL? But not leave the University of Georgia, which, same thing as Texas, has everything you want there, built-in success in the state of Georgia, to go to Tuscaloosa, even though he was there under Nick Saban for quite some time. So who was left? I mean, who was truly left to take over for Nick Saban, the GOAT? It came down to a couple guys for me. I mean, Kalen DeBoer, obviously at Washington, who's the guy. I always thought that Lane Kiffin should be in the discussion, a guy that had been to Alabama, had success, helped evolve the offense under Nick Saban for a time, kind of taking from that 21 personnel a little bit more to what we're seeing with different formations, shifts, motions, personnel groupings. He's had a lot of success at Ole Miss in the SEC, but I do think that it may be possibly some bad blood from the departure of how things ended up during his tenure there in Tuscaloosa. So kind of don't know if there was enough momentum for him from the powers to be to bring Lane Kiffin back. And then Deion Sanders was another one that kind of got some late momentum as well. And I don't even know how true that was. I know there were some talking heads talking about Deion Sanders and what he was able to create at Colorado in just a year with the recruiting, quadrupling the wins they had from a season ago. But they wanted to go a proven winner. And I will give credit to my boy T-Bob, who was unable to make the show today to kind of do this instant reaction. Kalen DeBoer, everywhere he's gone, has won. Lower levels, has won 3 national championships, went to Fresno, turned that team to a 9-win football team, gets to Washington, turns that team to an 11-win team in its first year, and then fast forward to this season, undefeated, takes down Oregon twice, goes through a very difficult Pac-12. I mean, if you look at the Pac-12 this year, we're kind of dogging it at the offseason of, hey, the Pac-12's dead, the Pac-12 is going to go by after this year, what are they going to look like? And ended up being one of the more competitive conferences, if not the most competitive conference in all of college football this season. They got through it unscathed. Two massive wins versus Oregon, a coach that was in contention to possibly get this job here in Alabama, and you beat him twice. And you did it at times with a variety of ways. At times this year, the defense showed up. I mean, hell, they showed up versus Michigan for 2.5 quarters. You did it with a Heisman contending quarterback, elite receiver play, an offensive line that just won the Joe Moore Award. And all of this was out with really the opportunity to build a roster maybe the way that he wanted to build it. He did this in 2 years at Washington. I mean, it's just an incredible success story. So when you talk about getting someone who has kind of worked his way up the ranks, but while doing so has just won in divisions where you have essentially equal playing field. You know, when he's at the lower divisions, he was winning games against people that were equal to them with talent, with coaching, with resources. He won, and then he won at the highest of high levels here in the Pac-12, leading his team to a national championship game. Obviously, unfortunate the loss to Michigan. So when you look at the difficulty of replacing Nick Saban, it was never going to be easy. It was going to come down to just a few people who legitimately had a chance to take over for the greatest coach of all time. But you do have a guy, like I said, that has had success, and you have a guy that's now walking into a situation where everything is laid out nicely. Nick Saban has built one of the strongest, and probably the strongest, T-ball phrase here, empire that college football has ever seen. The foundation is strong. It is rock solid. We talked about this the other day on the show of it would take a buffoon to jump in this situation and mess it up. You have fan buy-in, you have facilities, you have the front office, you have the personnel, and it's going to be interesting to see what the personnel looks like with this 30-day window opening of, hey, maybe he brings guys from Washington because now Washington has 30 days to hit the portal, those guys. So maybe he brings some guys from there to come in there to help. But his goal right now is going to be to make sure that as many players on Alabama stay in Tuscaloosa over the next 30 days. Because as we've seen over the past 2 or 3 years, what this roster is built of is a bunch of 4- and 5-star players. The one of the greatest, if not the greatest, recruiting classes of all time from a year ago is currently on that roster right now. And you're going to lose a couple guys, Isaiah Bond, receiver, who ended up being pretty darn good towards the end of the season, maybe their top 1 or 2 guy. Just hit the portal. Not saying he's going to go. I mean, hell, you look at the success of Washington last year and those receivers. Maybe Kalen DeBoer can convince him to stay in Tuscaloosa. So, all in all, how do you grade this hire for Alabama? Time will tell. I think it's a good hire. I'm not going to put a grade on it. You never know what the fit's going to be culturally when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to obviously on-field success in this new SEC era, this new era of college football. But you got a winner. You got a guy that's won championships. You got a guy that just led his team to a national championship. I think if you're an Alabama fan, I think you have to feel pretty happy right now with Kalen DeBoer. So, man, congrats. Good luck. And don't forget, too, Nick Saban had a say in this hire. So if you get Nick Saban's blessing, you got to feel pretty good as a fan base and as Kalen DeBoer that Nick Saban said, hey, man, I've been watching what that guy's done, and I think he'd be a pretty darn good coach to take over for me. So Kalen DeBoer, the next head coach at Alabama. So we'll get more reactions. We'll get T-Bob on here, obviously, and we will see you guys on Monday for another edition of Snaps.